Every single year, a multi-billion-dollar theatrical ritual plays out in the global technology market. Samsung takes the stage to unveil its latest flagship devices. They showcase mind-bending hardware innovation, screens that fold perfectly in half, cameras boasting massive 200-megapixel sensors, 100 times space zooms, and ultra-premium displays manufactured in their own cutting-edge factories. They consistently push the absolute boundaries of raw engineering, spending billions of dollars annually to prove one definitive point, that their hardware is superior. And on paper, it is. Samsung is an industrial giant that ships more total smartphones than almost any other company on Earth. But a few months later, Apple quietly launches the latest iPhone. It features a design that looks nearly identical to the previous year, incremental internal upgrades, and hardware specifications that often look modest compared to Samsung's bleeding-edge spec sheets. Yet, when the financial data comes back at the end of the fiscal quarter, a staggering economic distortion becomes visible. Apple systematically captures over 80% of the entire global smartphone industry's profits. While Samsung dominates the mass volume metrics, Apple commands an absolute, highly lucrative monopoly over the premium segment, the exact bracket where consumers willingly hand over $1,200 or more for a single pocket device. But Samsung isn't losing the premium race because their engineering teams are lazy, and Apple isn't winning because their microchips are magic. Instead, Apple is winning a quiet, brutal war of psychology. While Samsung spends billions trying to out-engineer their rival, Apple quietly built a social prison, weaponizing ecosystem lock-in, premium prestige, and a simple color-coded messaging system that turns a green text bubble into a literal social penalty. This is the story of the ultimate head-to-head corporate clash, how raw hardware innovation ran face-first into cultural engineering, and why Samsung is finding that you can easily copy a competitor's specs, but it is almost impossible to copy their prestige. To understand how this battle lines up, you have to look at the fundamentally opposite DNA of how these two empires make money. Samsung is a massive, highly diversified industrial conglomerate. They don't just assemble phones, they build the actual components. They manufacture their own processors, their own camera lenses, and crucially, their own industry-leading OLED displays. In fact, Samsung's component division is so advanced that for years, Apple had to pay Samsung billions of dollars to supply the screens for the iPhone. Because Samsung owns the supply chain, their corporate playbook was built on total market saturation. They build a phone for every single human being on Earth, from a $150 budget device in developing economies to a $1,500 folding flagship in New York or London. Apple's playbook is entirely different. They don't care about owning the entire pyramid, they only care about owning the top. Apple operates as a premium luxury boutique disguised as a technology platform. They outsource their physical manufacturing to third-party hubs and focus entirely on industrial design, software integration, and consumer aspiration. They only release a handful of high-end models a year, ensuring their brand remains entirely associated with high economic status. This structural difference creates a massive financial imbalance. Samsung has to manage the staggering operational overhead of producing dozens of different phone models across thin profit margins to maintain their volume metrics. Apple can run massive, historic profit margins on just a few models because their consumers aren't buying a utility gadget. They are buying membership into an elite digital ecosystem. The ultimate weapon in Apple's arsenal is what media economists call the walled garden, a strategy built on maximizing ecosystem lock-in. When a consumer buys an iPhone, Apple doesn't just sell them a piece of hardware. They gently guide them into setting up an iCloud account, buying an Apple Watch, syncing their MacBook, and purchasing an iPad for their children. Each device functions perfectly with the other, creating a frictionless, highly automated web of convenience. AirPods connect instantly to the iPhone. A text message received on the phone appears seamlessly on the laptop screen. Files transfer instantly via AirDrop. But that beautiful convenience hides an immense strategic barrier to entry for competitors. If a premium iPhone user looks at Samsung's latest innovative folding phone and thinks about switching, they realize that leaving Apple isn't just about changing their physical device. It means their Apple Watch will lose half its functionality. It means their iCloud photos must be manually migrated. It means they lose seamless compatibility with their family's shared calendars and subscription loops. Apple built a fortress where the walls are made of absolute convenience on the inside, but absolute friction if you try to step outside. Samsung can design the most beautiful folding hardware in the world, but it remains a solitary device trying to break through a fully integrated digital lifestyle matrix. But Apple's most brilliant and controversial psychological weapon isn't a hardware spec or a cloud feature. It's a simple blue text box. In the United States and among younger demographics globally, iMessage is the default communication layer for youth culture. When two iPhone users text each other, the conversation happens securely over Apple's proprietary servers, illuminating the chat bubble in a clean, vibrant blue. It unlocks high-resolution video sharing, typing indicators, read receipts, and seamless group chats. But the exact second a Samsung user enters that chat thread, the entire conversation drops back to 1990s SMS technology. The bubble violently shifts from blue to an unstyled, jarring green. The video quality drops to pixelated dial-up speeds, typing indicators vanish, and group chats become completely broken and fractured. To a group of teenagers or corporate professionals, the green bubble doesn't signal that someone chose a different operating system. It acts as a digital scarlet letter. It signals that someone is breaking the group dynamic, causing technical friction, and acting as an outsider to the network. This isn't an accidental software bug. It is an intentional, highly protected corporate marketing strategy. Internal Apple emails exposed during legal battles revealed that top executives explicitly blocked attempts to bring iMessage to Android, with executives stating that doing so would hurt us more than help us, because it would remove a major barrier for parents buying iPhones for their children. Apple successfully engineered a social penalty into a communications protocol. Samsung can spend billions on advertising campaigns showing off their 100 times camera zoom, but a teenager will still demand an iPhone because they are terrified of the social isolation that comes with a green bubble. Realizing that they were losing the psychological war in standard smartphones, Samsung made an incredibly bold, multi-billion-dollar bet to rewrite the script, the foldable revolution. They launched the Galaxy Fold and Flip lineups, creating an entirely new category of mobile hardware. It was a massive statement of engineering dominance designed to make the standard flat slab iPhone look completely prehistoric and boring. But the foldable strategy exposed a severe limitation in how consumers judge technology. While tech enthusiasts praised the engineering marvel of folding glass, the mainstream premium consumer reacted with caution. They looked at the visible crease down the center of the display, questioned the long-term durability of a moving mechanical hinge, and realized that a folding screen didn't actually solve a major friction point in their everyday lives. It was an engineering triumph, but a consumer lifestyle mismatch. Worse, Apple has mastered the art of letting their competitors take the early, expensive risks of hardware development. Apple watches from the sidelines, while Samsung spends billions testing foldable screens, managing consumer product recalls, and refining the manufacturing yields. Once the technology matures, becomes cheap to produce, and has a clear mainstream utility, Apple can step in, release their own refined version, and use their massive brand equity to declare they have invented the future. Samsung is effectively funding the research and development pipeline for a market that Apple ultimately capitalizes on. Samsung is an absolute powerhouse. They build the literal foundation of modern consumer electronics, and the global technology market could not physically function without their manufacturing capabilities. But they are learning a painful lesson about the modern digital economy. Hardware is a commodity, but perception is a monopoly. By focusing entirely on building a better machine rather than building a stronger culture, Samsung left themselves exposed to Apple's psychological engineering. You can easily outspec a competitor in a laboratory, but you cannot outspec a cultural network effect. Apple doesn't dominate the premium mindshare because their cameras have more pixels. They dominate because they turn their ecosystem into an essential badge of social inclusion. The ultimate lesson of Apple versus Samsung is that in high-stakes business, the company that wins the technical specs wins the present. But the company that wins the human behavior wins the future. If you found this deep dive into corporate rivalries, ecosystem locks, and the psychology of tech branding valuable, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. We track the high-stakes decisions, hidden monopolies, and structural wars of the world's most powerful empires. Drop a comment below. Are you locked into Apple's blue bubble fortress? Or are you a proud Samsung user rocking folding hardware? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter.